To our KORTX series exploring strategies, partnerships, and innovations that are shaping the future of digital marketing. I'm Corey Rice, Director of Strategy at KORTX, and over the years, I've had the privilege of working alongside some of the most ambitious companies in the franchise space. And today, I'll be highlighting one that stands out as truly innovative: Horsepower Brands. They are a leader in the home services franchise space with a portfolio of 9 brands that provide everything from roofing to lawn care, custom glass, fencing, painting, lighting, blinds, insulation, HVAC, pretty much every service that a homeowner could need. And almost exactly a year ago, KORTX launched our partnership with Horsepower. We've been working together to manage digital marketing across the 9 brands, and the collaboration has led to both local and national growth. Joining us today is Laura Vodvarka, Chief Marketing Officer of Horsepower Brands. Laura brings deep expertise in building marketing programs that produce franchise growth, and she's leading the charge in developing a model that connects franchise owners with their customers. We are thrilled to talk with her today about the journey so far, what's working in franchise marketing, and where opportunities lie in the future. Laura, welcome.
Thanks, Corey.
Great to have you here. It's hard to believe it's been almost 6 months since we had that session together at LeadsCon in Las Vegas. I'm excited that we have another opportunity to sit down and talk.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure. Always fun conversations to dig into with you guys.
And we are based here in Detroit, Michigan. Where are you?
I'm in Omaha, Nebraska. That's where our corporate headquarters is. Our locations are all across the country.
Great. Well, let's start broadly. So as chief marketing officer, how do you define your leadership approach across such a fast growing and broad portfolio?
Yeah, when I've been involved in other startups in the franchising space that are looking to grow quickly. And what it comes down to for me, the right type of leadership for the teams in this space is being that servant leader. My teams are the ones that are doing all the day-to-day effort. They're the ones working with the franchise owners or our brands and their teams to really put together the best marketing and branding that we can. So I need to be there to support them and make sure that they have the strategy and the vision to work towards, but they have some flexibility in how they actually execute that. In general, I think the processes have to be very tight, but we've hired them because they're experts and they have that intellectual capital, which is one of our core values. And so I need to let them run and do their thing while defining what those processes are for the actual execution across different teams.
And so within 9 brands, right, they're all at various stages of growth. They've all come on at different times. How do you the marketing strategy across those brands when you're looking at 9 different approaches, as you said?
Yeah, it can be difficult with this portfolio mindset is what I call it. We have to plan for different projects or efforts, initiatives that we're doing at scale. So it may be executed slightly different across the different brands based on the customer needs and their journey. But generally speaking, we are attacking the same initiative across all the brands at the same time. And a lot of times we learn as we go. We'll do one brand at a time, learn and evolve that process or that initiative to really make it even better for the subsequent brands. And of course, the ones that we've already done it for and updating it. But really, it comes back to one, like, how does this apply to all of our brands? And two, how do we start small and then scale it, learning the learnings from it and taking those to execute for the rest. For example, one of the efforts that we've tested more recently is outbound cold calling with a vendor. And so we started with maybe 6 franchise locations across 2 brands to see how that actually worked, got the data, made the case study, and then launched it with the other locations, with the other brands. Now it's up to them if they want to do it or not. But there's other examples where we do apply it across the board from our point of view.
It sounds like a great opportunity. We'll get into testing and learning in a little bit in the conversation, but having that ability to identify an opportunity within one of the brands, find a couple of franchises, like you said, and test that and apply it broadly is a great benefit across the whole portfolio. When you think about success, though, at a high level, obviously leads, revenue, all those KPIs are going to be the same across all the brands. But from your position as CMO, not just in terms of KPIs, how do you define success when it comes to, let's say, brand equity or just creating long-term value for the brand?
Yeah. We get asked this question, or I get asked this question a lot, by new franchise owners, coming on board, or some of our legacy owners that have been around for a while. For us, from the brand perspective or horsepower perspective, we need to be really focused on creating that brand equity. And so that there's a couple different, metrics, could be a lot of different metrics that we look at for this, but it's how recognizable are we, in the markets that we're in for that service? Are we known as a trusted provider? Do we have that strong word of mouth from, current customers? And really some of that translates into reviews, to referrals, some of those types of metrics. We're from the brand level looking at how do we create that brand equity? What is that gap that we're continuing to increase between the value of our service and the brand and them choosing us as the service provider versus maybe just a local small business. And the more that we can communicate and message the value there, the more that we'll get customers, future customers that come to us because they trust us. So there's definitely those specific metrics around that and KPIs that we can measure, but it's really around that, being trusted and recognizable and referred through that word of mouth. Whereas on the local level, the franchise owners, while they're doing a lot of activities that fall into those buckets, they are really focused on the local lead generation. That comes down to working with our agency partners to figure out what that paid, spend plan is locally.
And you make a great point too, because from a home services perspective, regardless of the category, you're not only competing with large national brands, you're also competing with the local providers as well, which adds another layer of competitiveness to it. But when we think about brand management specifically, and again, with 9 brands under the Horsepower umbrella, how do you balance emphasizing the individuality of each of those brands while still leveraging the benefits of a broader portfolio model at the Horsepower level?
Great question. We have to have brand guidelines. We have to have brand strategies with every single brand. So we have to be very specific in that, the customers that come to us for some of our different, you could say, need-based brands versus want-based brands, or design element versus emergency services. We have to be really keyed in on the specifics of what that homeowner customer is looking for. And part of that is just through partnership with the brand leaders themselves and through them, with our franchise owners, the folks that are really boots on the ground, talking to customers day in and day out. And what are those insights that we can roll up and capture and make sure that comes through in our brand guidelines, our strategies, and ultimately our messaging, our offers, our advertising that's out there. So we have to, again, make sure that we are capturing that data, kind of synthesizing it and putting it into our plans and our roadmaps. Well, there are some things that are pretty consistent across the board. For example, our websites. Online booking is so critical right now with everybody, with the entire consumer base. That doesn't necessarily vary from one industry to the next. Maybe where in their research process it may present itself in a different place, but that's an example of one that we know this applies to every single brand, and we're going to get it done, as quickly as we can and make sure that there's online booking as many places as can be.
So absolutely. And so for one specific brand, Varsity Zone, which is the newest brand, it came on roughly a year ago, right around the time that we launched our partnership. What is the process from a high level when you're onboarding a brand into the Horsepower system from a marketing standpoint? What does that process look like?
Yeah, great question. So what we typically do at Horsepower is we partner with or find a local business that has maybe been in that market, in that industry for a good period of time. They've kind of figured out the edge in that market and they're doing really good services. And typically we call them our founders, those founders want to expand their business. They have a vision of how to expand it. We end up partnering with them to then franchise it. And so we lean on them quite a bit for whether it's, intel that they've captured over the years and learnings from being in the home of, the target audience. We can run analysis, we'll partner with agencies like KORTX to run analysis on the specific, maybe customer data that we can get from them. And what does that look like in terms of demographics and psychographics? We will do customer surveys and get insights that way. But so we're taking all of that and then we're using our marketing expertise to then add on top of it or amplify what that local founder has learned already, to whether it's do a brand refresh or put together these playbooks and roadmaps and be able to create assets and advertising creative, for our eventual franchise owners that are doing the startup model within their markets to use to make it a little bit more turnkey.
Like you mentioned earlier, it sounds like that's a perfect scenario of being able to rely on some of the processes and best practices that you've built with the other brands, and then pull it forward as new ones come on board.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's where, yeah, we've got the processes fleshed out to put those roadmaps and analysis or surveys or whatever it is together. And so it's a little bit of rinse and repeat just with that different industry customer base.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving into team building and collaboration a little bit, tell me about the structure of your team within Horsepower and how you developed it to support both the corporate brand strategy as well as what's needed for the local franchises.
Yeah. So we have franchise marketing coaches. We have a team of them that are really the day-to-day support for the franchisees. So they're the ones, training them in the beginning, doing the ongoing kind of performance management with the franchisee. It's really coaching them to
Mhm.
understand the results they're getting and the levers they may have to pull, or maybe it's questions they should be asking their agencies. So they are brand specific for the most part. We have some that maybe cover more than one brand for somebody goes on vacation, but they're really tasked with that day-to-day support and coaching of the franchisee, but knowing the brand that they're advising with. But then some of the other teams, to the points we've been talking about that portfolio or scalable systems, they are so like a marketing operations team, our strategy team, our creative team, social media team. They are working on all the brands at once. So they're more of let's call it a channel expert or a technical expert in their
Mhm.
area. And then they work on all the brands. That said, some of them are also geared towards specific brands. So we've got 4 graphic designers. While they can back each other up and a lot of those truths in graphic design work for all the brands, they're generally focused on 1 or 2 brands to create that consistency and really just that creativity. And then we have some folks that we only need one person to do this one job across all 9 brands.
Sure.
And so they work on all of them.
Yeah, so it's more about bringing in a skill set that then you can apply to any of the brands that need that. And when you're building out your team, I'm just curious, are you looking to bring on hires that are more familiar with home services as a specific vertical, or to have an area of marketing expertise that then you can bring them up to speed on home services if they've worked in another vertical prior to coming into Horsepower?
It's really a mix. There's some roles where it does make sense to bring in folks from the industry. But for me, it's really about how much ingenuity does the person have? What is their experience within the tactic or the
Mhm.
job that they're going to do? I do think having franchising experience is very important. Franchising is just a different animal from other business models. And so
Sure.
under the nuances with franchising or multi-location support is really important. And then yeah, the industry experience is important in certain roles, but it's not in all of them. So honestly, it's really a mix. And we try to find somebody that has all of those, but that's a lot of times a unicorn.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So thinking about, maybe a chance for people who may be watching, other team leaders that are looking for advice on managing, multiple departments within a marketing team, right? You've got operations, all the areas that you just mentioned within the team structure. What is your approach from a CMO perspective to cross team alignment, just getting multiple departments, again, across 9 brands, in your scenario, to be able to just work together and create process that develops well and just, efficiency and effectiveness?
Yep. So we here at Horsepower follow the EOS model, the
Hmm.
entrepreneurial operating system, or the book is Traction. So we have that whole structure with annual planning and doing bigger projects and initiatives and kind of the quarterly structure. And we have what we call level 10 meetings from that.
All
There
10.
is information that's supposed to roll up and down and across from that. But, admittedly, cross team, cross division communication is a challenge. It is definitely a challenge at Horsepower. It's a challenge in a lot of startup type companies. And though we've been at this for 4 or 5 years now, I can't say we have it figured out. But what I can say is that we've started making some strides in that area where, like, one with my teams on the marketing side, there are probably 5 different departments within marketing. And so one of the things that we started about a year ago is a marketing power hour. Once a month, it's kind of like an all hands marketing meeting, but we try to keep it fun. It's informal. Everybody's kind of giving an update on what they're working on for that month or that quarter. And they give shout outs to each other. Like, that's been really good for culture. And we have recently even just done a remix of it and try to mix it up to get some more creativity involved. So that one's fun. But But in terms of the brands, the brand leaders, actual operations teams, there's some other, it's meeting oriented at this point. I'm excited to see what AI can help us with in this regard. But we do have a monthly meeting with our brand leaders, our vice presidents or brand presidents and the marketing directors. And it's an open forum of sorts. They can ask anything. We do give them updates in that. And so it's a good problem solving session is what it turns into sometimes of, here we know that we're going this direction or having some challenges. So how do we look at that? I also sit in, of course, our executive meeting, but also we have a group president layer that would be in between executive and our brand leaders. And so there's a lot of things that we hash out in there and try to communicate, and then they communicate down as well. So standing meetings are something that we do with different operational teams as well. But it's a challenge. I don't know the answer to this one, but it's constantly taking that feedback and trying to get better at how we communicate.
No, that's great. I mean, it is a challenge that we all face every day. And you make a great point. I mean, you can have tools, EOS, L10 meetings, Power Hour sounds great. I think I may have even seen the room where you hold those meetings when we were down there in Omaha a few times. But you're right. It all comes down to communication. And the more that we can facilitate communication between teams, open communication, right, that moves things forward is always going to be beneficial. We do a lot of those same things here at KORTX as well. With that said, this is actually probably a great time, a good setup. We talked about how horsepower approaches, marketing, your team setup, all of that. I'd like to bring in someone who's actually been in the trenches from the KORTX side of this partnership. Joining us is Eric Stubenvoll, who is the managing director here at KORTX. Eric oversees our partnership with Horsepower Brands. He's been very closely involved from day one, minute one. Eric, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Corey. Good to be here.
If you could kick it off, just jumping in here, if you could share your view on the partnership, how has it evolved, since you joined? And maybe just a few things that have been exciting from your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a great partnership. I can't believe how much we've actually accomplished within a year. Our relationship started really kind of looking at just general connected television, CTV, and how we could help maybe a little bit more at a regional or even national perspective from that. But it was really, as we do with all of our digital marketing, it was really rooted in kind of an audience data insights approach. And quickly, as we went through that test, I think there was a lot of similarities in terms of what Horsepower was trying to do at the local level. And so we naturally kind of progressed into a more localized conversation and how we could help the franchise network. I think what's been really exciting to see, it was there at the outset, it continues to be there today, is really that alignment in that focus on data and insights and that willingness to learn and move fast. Similarly, we use an EOS system here. I think that was actually brought up in one of our first meetings in Omaha, seeing the sign in the conference room and just having that immediate alignment and understand, okay, they follow kind of the same business rules that we do here at KORTX, and everything just kind of naturally aligned from there. So there's been rapid growth. There's been some hiccups along the way, but I think that the nice part is it's a very transparent conversation that we continue to have. And I'm excited to see what the next year brings.
Excellent. Well, let's talk about the partnership a little bit. Laura, from your perspective, what led you to choose KORTX as a media partner, and what are some things that you've seen evolve just over the past year from a high level?
Yeah, we started the relationship, as Eric said, with the CTV campaign that we were looking to try. We hadn't gotten into that before, and KORTX has been kind of a leader in that area, and we got connected, I think, through mutual contact. But it was really what stood apart was the data and the reporting that you guys have. Such a great focus on the data. And that's where we have to understand that. And a lot of times in franchising, the data is so disparate. There's all these different systems that don't really speak to each other. So it's hard to get that full picture. And so that's something that I think KORTX was able to bring to the table and talk us through, that really pretty much right away. And you guys have offered some different solutions around that too, to even, get more of our other systems connected. How has it evolved? I think we've continued to leverage you guys. You guys have continued to offer to us, different elements like the personas, and you basically did personas and positioning, customer targeting, demographics, and some of that analysis. And you were able to bring that to the table. I don't even think we really had to ask for it. We were talking about doing it, and you ended up doing the analysis for all of our brands, which then, has made it into our roadmaps and some of our strategies that we look at on a regular basis. So that partnership of you understanding our goals and us just communicating, kind of what our challenges are and what our needs are, has been great over the last year.
Yeah, and you mentioned the persona specifically, and I remember working on that project that came through my team. On the strategy side, my colleague Drew, we worked on it as well. Let's dive into that a little bit. So thinking about the impact of the partnership, things that we've collaborated on. Again, working across 9 different brands, developing personas, market research. How have those assets and that research? How has that been used on your side from a brand perspective, and how have you applied it to ways that you've started to look at media strategy?
Yeah. So, I mean, one is, for our franchise owners, we're there to train them and kind of coach them through what they need to do on a local basis. And, sometimes that can be a gap. Most of them don't have marketing backgrounds. And so to wrap their brain around, okay, I have to spend dollars, but I want to spend it in my entire territory because I own all this, land, let's say, that really helped us put it into the roadmap where it's no, you don't want to put this ad in front of every single person in your entire city because it's not going to land. You don't want all of those customers. So let's look at who, our ideal customer is. How do they think about things? What do they value? How are they going to go through this purchasing process? And I think it just really helps that franchise owner make sense of, okay, so I need to refine and be very efficient in how I'm spending my dollars. So we've, again, put that into our roadmaps and our training for the franchisees. But I think it's also helped our conversations with our brand leaders and, how are we utilizing some dollars that we have from the corporate level? We're not going to be going after, just buying leads from the corporate level. That's just inefficient. The location should be doing that. So how do we figure out, what is the best, whether it's CTV type channels that fit our target demographics, or how can we get really hyper focused in finding where they are that we can do from a scalable way. So yeah, it's been great having those. And I think it adds a lot of credibility in the franchise owner's mind to both you all and us together as a partnership.
Yeah, and Eric, from your perspective, thinking back to, when we finalized the partnership, kind of the dust settled and we started moving forward, and building out the strategies, doing the research. Is there anything that sticks out in your mind, thinking back as the partnership started to evolve, that really kind of, made you feel like it was solidified and you were starting to see success from it, from our partnership standpoint?
Yeah, I think, I could probably look at it singularly and say, we finalized our partnership roughly a year ago. We had one franchise owner who was just launching her location and decided to work with us based on kind of this audience and data insight strategy. And she's continued to flourish. She's working with us still today, which is great. She has, again, very transparent conversations with us. And so just understanding how the data works, what is the timeline going to look like in terms of getting your business off the ground, seeing that progression over 12 months and now being able to continually apply it to other franchisees that have come on board with us in that year. It's just been really, really fun to see. And it continues for the most part to follow the same path that she followed kind of on day one.
Yeah, absolutely. And Laura, from your perspective, when you're looking at bringing on a new partner, you're looking at, vetting different options. What advice would you give to other people in your situation when they're looking to choose new media partners? What was kind of your criteria, or what will it continue to be as Horsepower evolves?
Yeah. So, one thing to know is we don't have a brand fund here. So there isn't as much that we're doing spend wise from the brand level. So for us, finding preferred agencies is very much about, one, like how can you support our data analysis and what we're recommending to franchisees? So it is that data roll up and that angle on it. But then the other piece is, how are you doing the localization for the franchisee? How are you working with the franchise owner on their specific marketing plan, their targets for revenue for the year, and in some of their metrics that they have, close rate and things like that all fall into how much do you need to spend on marketing, right? And so it's understanding that, our strategies and the marketing mix that makes sense for each of our brands is not only digital, it's also some of these offline or traditional avenues. And so how are you really advising the franchisee on a comprehensive or holistic marketing plan, and, making sure that we're aligned with that? Because we've had agencies come in and they're only focused on, some very specific digital channels and the entire budget is used there. And then what happens is their marketing doesn't really bring in the results that they need because it's not the right mix. They're not doing enough different things for where the customer needs to find them. So that's what I look for. I mean, that's a simplistic version. Certainly there's other kind of technical and channel requirements that we'll look at as well, and customer service and such. But really, how are you going to localize the strategies with that local owner?
Got it. So, Laura, from your perspective, overseeing the marketing investment from really three angles: nationally, regionally, locally. How do you tackle this from a high level, and where do you see a lot of the value for horsepower get unlocked in your marketing budget?
As I said, we don't have, an ad fund or a brand fund. And so, we are very efficient in the dollars that we spend from the corporate perspective. So what we really look at is, what is the best value to get that brand equity or the brand awareness out there with what we are doing from a national perspective. And a lot of times that is, retargeting for CTV or, on Meta or other display, YouTube type efforts. That some of those, it's a little bit harder for franchisees to execute on the local level because they may have, minimums that are a bit high for them. Certainly if their agency can execute on all of those, usually it's a bit more manageable rather than going to different vendors for all those different things. But that's where we are looking for that, even on the local level for the franchisees. If they can do all those different efforts, it's the full funnel approach. That's where they start to unlock. We've seen some really good results with the connected TV as well. So it's really getting that brand out there. I will say though that really unlocking the marketing results is both, what they're doing with their agency and then what they're doing locally in terms of getting reviews and other, I would say, local trust efforts. Maybe organic social posts that they're doing where they're showing up in the community, through reviews and reposting that, or if they're at a local event and they're taking pictures and just showing their own, character as a business owner and the fact that they're hyper local. So when we see those two things combined, that's where those franchisees start to really unlock the results and get this momentum and traction that it's very hard for the others not doing the reviews and the other local efforts to get.
Sure. And that takes a lot of effort, like you said, on the franchisee side, and reputation management, highlighting positive reviews, all of that, which really doesn't necessarily ladder up to paid media efforts, but the combination of those is where it sounds like where the value is really comes in. And then Eric, from your perspective, I know we worked very closely on a lot of the strategy, the way that we've developed the approach to the paid media strategy for the various brands. Are there kind of areas or I guess variables to the strategy that you've noticed that have surfaced that, we want to make sure that we're highlighting or taking into account on the strategy side?
Yeah, certainly. There's a number of things that we look at, whether it's kind of the variance of the locality, as Laura was saying earlier, understanding, this half of your market may take you 2.5 hours to drive to get to an appointment. Right now, you're a sales team of one. It might make sense to focus your efforts on the other half of your market where you can line up appointments kind of more in a back-to-back fashion, get off the ground a little bit quicker. There's things like seasonality, depending on the vertical you're in. The Northeast is going to be very different than the Southwest. So even though you work for the same brand, it's going to be a very different approach that we take in those regions. And then lastly, I would just say that, certainly, as Laura was mentioning, getting reviews is paramount to everything that you're doing. It builds up your brand, not only from a paid perspective, if you're in a vertical where you can implement something like local service ads, but even in just building up your organic presence. That's an area where we've been helping franchisees as well, not only from reviews, but getting blogs written. If they have videos that they're taking on site, getting those up on their pages. Anything they can do at the local level to build their individual brand is going to be very, very important to what they do. So it's understanding that. It's understanding where do they sit in the maturation cycle. Are they on day 10 of being a business? Are they on day 1000 of being a business? That's a very different area to sit in. So we have, again, very transparent conversation. Transparency is always something that that we're trying to provide, understanding what their goals are and outlining a roadmap that allows them to get there.
Yeah. And one of my takeaways as a strategist is that obviously there's no one size fits all when we're talking about 9 different brands. And then you take into account what you said, Eric, the regionality, the locality, seasonality, all these different variables. Our approach was to start to develop different package levels, right? So whether you're a brand new franchise that's just starting versus one that's trying to mature within their region versus one that's doing very well and just wants to continue to expand, is at least giving them a starting point between paid search, paid social, and then programmatic. Laura, you've mentioned a couple of different ways and tactics that are working, whether it's CTV on the high level, on the upper funnel, retargeting, making sure that we're converting those into leads. Within those different channels, we'll kind of boil it down, Laura. So paid search, paid social, programmatic. Within those channels, is there anything that I guess sticks out to you as far as like something that tends to work across all of the brands regardless when you strip away all those different variables? Or do you see a role for each of those, or does it really come down to having to do individualized strategic approach for each of the brands?
Yeah. So, when I think about it, I think it falls under the paid search category. About half of our brands have the ability to do Google local service ads or Google guaranteed. And that is an absolute must for anyone that has that availability. So that tends to be, a really good quality source. And you don't always get the volume, but it's a great lead source. And so as much as we can do there, we do. And so as I kind of characterized before, we've got our more design-based or want-based brands versus our need-based brands. And so where I see a little bit of difference is the paid social has to have a bigger role in the design or the want-based brands, whereas paid search does still have a big role in the need-based, so like your roofing and your HVAC and some of that, because people need it right then, whereas the design-based with social and some of the programmatic too, you really have to plant the seed, and it's a longer marketing cycle with them to get them to the point of, okay, now I do need this. Like it was originally a want, but now I need it. So it varies a little bit, but we can generally group them into those buckets. And of course, as Eric was talking about too, there is very much some regionality or looking at the competitor base within their specific market that plays factors into what level of each of those, or what piece of the pie, how much of that pie those different categories take.
Got it. And so let's talk a little bit about trends that we're seeing. Eric, I'll start with you. So when we're thinking about, I guess, from a digital strategy perspective, things that you're seeing working with franchisees, what are some trends that you're seeing as far as, on the marketing roadmap, things maybe we're looking at now that we weren't looking at a year ago that you've noticed that are starting to come up?
Well, I'll take a step back. I don't know that this is necessarily something that we weren't paying attention to a year ago. We certainly were, but to reiterate, local service ads, if you are in a vertical that can have local service ads, you have to have it. It is much more impactful, obviously, the more you mature and the more reviews you get. But that is something that has continued to be a theme across every location that we work with that has the ability to implement it. I would say from a broader perspective, you have Google, you have PPC, that's going to be your low hanging fruit. It's very intent driven from a marketing perspective, but it's really paying attention to what's going on in AEO. When it comes to different systems, whether that be chat or Gemini or Perplexity, some other system that users are going into to find information about a brand. Now it's about setting that groundwork, that framework to make sure that as that evolves, as that can grow, your brand is going to show up kind of in that zero search area, right? Within the system. You want to be seen as a leader. So it's just, those are different conversations that we're having now with both obviously at corporate levels and at the franchise level, and where we can make tweaks to help adjust to that growing reality that we're living in.
Yep, it's happening very quickly. Laura, from your perspective, you're hearing from people that are out in the field from, the different levels within the organization. What are some trends that you're seeing, whether it's on the consumer side, on the marketing side? What's kind of top of mind for you right now?
Yeah, I think there's, from a macro level, a lot of economic uncertainty that ebbs and flows over time. And, we're seeing that right now in terms of more consumers looking for more of the repairs or, the refurbishing that they're doing and less on kind of new system installs. So we do have to be cognizant of that and make sure that we do have the right keywords, or maybe it's financing, that if they do need, a repair that turns into an install, that we have those right tools, promotions or financing available to to the end consumer. So that's one that we've been talking about quite a bit and really trying to get, franchise owners on board with, that concept. But yeah, as Eric said, the zero click world that we're in or going into even more is just making sure that, how can we be that leading voice and the expert that, the ChatGPT and Geminis of the world, are tuning into and capturing to be able to put in front of those folks who are searching for it. How can we be that leader? Some of it is, I think, with Google Business Profile and making sure that everything is optimized and we're putting content out there for when they do actually need services and are asking these types of systems. But how can we be the leaders in content and expertise, capturing that from our franchise owners on a local level and then us as well from the corporate level. We've been doing blogging, since we began, right? But it's how do we continue to evolve that and make sure that we have, whether it's testimonials or expertise or case studies that are in there that are very unique and authentic and not AI written content that's pretty generic that those systems aren't going to care for.
Full of M dashes, right? Those will tell you that it might be AI content. No, that's great. I think that gives us a good kind of snapshot of the pulse of right now. So thinking about the future, Laura, from your perspective, what does the next chapter look like for marketing at Horsepower? Anything that's on the horizon that you're thinking about, that your team is looking at? What's coming up next?
Yeah, I think it's really figuring out how, different AI systems can help us be more efficient or analyze at a deeper level more efficiently. So whether that is, how are there different work streams that we have that can be partnered with people, our internal folks to just execute in a better way or more efficiently faster for the franchisees. And really that helps us scale faster, whether it's content or otherwise. But analytics is the other one. As I mentioned, we've got a lot of different data sources. So how do we use AI to help us analyze that? Again, still partnered with a human to understand. I mean, marketing is an art and a science, and we want to leverage the science where we have that data as much as we can, but then also apply that art or what we know about people and human behavior, consumer behavior into what the numbers are telling us to really come up with that next creative idea, where we are already using AI to help with idea generation, whether it's in social media or blogging topics and things like that. Continue to use it that way, but how can we further enhance what our people and teams are doing with AI as it continues to evolve?
And what we're doing 20 days from now could be completely different than what we're doing right now with the speed that it's moving forward. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see how quickly it comes. Great. Well, to wrap things up, I'll ask you both, and Eric, we can start with you. Anything, or something that you're proud of looking back at the partnership, or thinking about the ways that we've been working with Horsepower, even just within the franchise space that you'd like to highlight, or a personal insight?
Yeah, I think, again, the thing I'm most proud of is just the transparent conversation. You don't always have those in relationships, and the fact that we can bring ideas and they aren't just kind of, for lack of a better term, shot down. They're very much accepted and reviewed, and it creates good dialogue. And conversely, the same thing is brought to us. Hey, here's a trend we're seeing. Here's something we would love to understand a little bit more. How can we pull data into that? I think is really great to see. I think as I look forward, even with what Laura was just saying about kind of the utilization of AI, I think it's always great to work with a partner that believes in kind of the machine and the human component behind what you're doing from a marketing perspective. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of companies out there just kind of screaming at the top of their lungs about AI and what they're utilizing AI for. Sure, you can utilize an AI system on top of a platform to run your marketing. And guess what? If your competitor is doing the same thing, there's no competitive advantage because you're doing the same thing. It's really about understanding. And the biggest question that I always offer up to franchisees today is, how is the AI system being used, right? What is the data being put into the AI system? How are humans interacting with it? What kind of local knowledge are we able to put into it? That's what we're doing here, right? Is we use a number of AI tools. It helps drive efficiency. It helps get plans done quicker, but we want to make sure that it's separating itself from every other AI system out there. So it's really utilizing it as a tool, not a be all end all. And again, just working with a partner that has that same philosophy is great.
Excellent. And Laura, to close out, is there something that you're particularly proud of, or something people might not realize that, you'd like to highlight about, leading marketing within the franchise space?
Yeah, I think, not talking about AI, but, some of our roadmaps and playbooks that we've put out there, which is really synthesizing again, what is the strategy of the who, what, where, when, why, how of, marketing and executing that on a local level. Been really proud of, putting out there transparently the KPIs within, our brands and some of that, working with you all with on the personas and otherwise, but it's what are the system averages that we're seeing for some of these marketing KPIs, and how does that compare to just the top performers and then the industry too on some of those. So putting that out there, it's just because we put it out there doesn't mean that franchisees are going to see it or understand it. And so then it's that coaching element and involving those roadmaps or bringing them up in almost every single conversation that we're having now with franchise owners to make sure that they understand that, can use it with their agency. That's been a huge, massive project this year, getting all of those published for 9 different brands and doing the analysis and the research, and then putting together the marketing mix kind of structure with that. So that's something I've been really excited. I love getting in the nerdy weeds of that. So we have it done for all of our brands, and I'm looking forward to already version 2 with lots of good ideas that have been thrown at us of what we could add or new layers. Maybe it's, regional data or seasonal data, which we have on the other business side, but not always in the marketing quite yet. So very excited to have gotten those out, and then for the next stage of it, and hearing feedback from our owners on and our agency partners on how that is helping, aid the marketing strategy process.
Excellent. Listen, this has been a wonderful discussion talking about all things KORTX and horsepower brands. Thank you both for joining. Laura, thank you for dialing in from Omaha, and we appreciate the time, and we'll look forward to the next one. Thank you, everybody.